I have 2 o'clock on my laptop, so we are going to start. First and foremost, welcome everyone. We recognize, well, it's a delicious time of year, but it's also a very busy time of year. So for all of you who are here today, we can't thank you enough. We are going to put you to work, but we appreciate that you are here. So with that, Kati, would you begin the roll call, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Matthew Conway.
Hello.
Dr.
Here.
Michael Coyne.
Hi, everybody.
Dr. Margie Gillis.
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Ben Healy.
Hello, everyone.
Stephen Hernandez.
Good to see everybody. Hello.
Dr. Melissa Hickey.
I'm here.
Jerry Highsmith.
I'm here.
Jasmine Ithier Vicente.
Here.
Dr. Tamu Lucero.
Here.
Dr. Ashley Oldham.
Here.
Sandra Scott Brown.
Present.
And Dr. James Zavardanchik.
Here.
Thank you. Roll call is now complete.
Excellent. And just to make sure, Kati, I think I heard Dr. Matt Conway come in, and if that's accurate, I just want to make sure that's recorded.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So welcome again. And by the end of today's meeting, the council and the director will be able to communicate the status of the K-3 literacy plan as you see in the agenda. We will confirm the goal or goals of this council for 2024 through 2026, and the work part. We will, in breakout rooms, start to rework, refine, and add to expand our current Connecticut K-3 literacy strategy to include grades 4 through 12. That's going to be our focus first before we tackle birth to 3. So our next order of business is to accept the minutes from October 15th. And just a reminder that aligned to Robert's Rules of Order, the first initial and last name of those who approve or oppose accepting the minutes will be reflected in today's meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes that you received by email dated October 15th, 2024?
I'll make
So
a
moved.
motion.
I'll second, Madam Administrator. This is Steve H.
Thank you. So we have a motion to approve, we have a second, and now discussion on the motion from the council. I don't see any hands, and I don't see any buttons pressed. So I believe we are all in favor of approving the minutes, and could you please signify that by either raising your hand or use the button on your screen? All those opposed, please raise your hand or use the raise hand button. Okay, I believe that there was no objection from what I can see on my screen, so the motion passes. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is our newly coined council member comments and insights. And this part, just as a reminder, is a time to share with us any comments you have received from your constituents. And I believe that the process was to inform Kati by email if you were interested in commenting. So I know, Dr. Hickey, I understand you placed your name, and also Stephen Hernandez, I see that you raised your hand, so I'm thinking that you would like to also add some comments to our group. And Kim Healy. So because Dr. Hickey, you had signed up first, we're just going to go in that order, time permitting. And we have allocated from 2:10, so we're a few minutes early, until 2:40. So Dr. Hickey first, and then I believe we will have time both for Mr. Hernandez and Ms. Healy.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Hickey?
Thank you so much. I have two things. One is legislative updates I just wanted to share. After the meeting, we'll send the packet of the State Department legislative proposals. One of those proposals directly applies to reading, in that it's the reading survey. So our legislative proposal from the State Department seeks to remove the mandate that the K-3 teachers holding an initial, provisional, or professional cert must take that survey on reading instruction. So we found only 17.6% of elementary teachers are currently eligible to take the survey. And the rest have graduated and taken the reading test. So the reading test and the survey are both produced by Pearson. So once again, we put forward to no longer have the reading survey, and the time that would have been spent both at the state and in the district on administering and taking would be better spent with professional learning and increasing skills. So that was just an update. But the thing that I wanted to put forward about the comments and insights, I know we've been talking about gathering from districts. What are we hearing from constituents, stakeholders? So our draft goals that we discussed the last time and are going to be confirming today, they include communicating feedback regarding the successes and the challenges related to the right to read legislation. And we know that there's that legislation about technical assistance and reviewing technical assistance provided to those districts that did not get a waiver. Now, in the past, I have shared the technical assistance, the professional learning, the grant monies, all the things that we've been doing to support districts and charter schools in choosing one of the approved programs, implementing them, and better understanding the science of reading. Some districts have participated in all the professional learning that has been provided. Some have participated in some professional learning, and yet there's some districts who haven't participated at all, nor have they taken any of the grant funds that were allocated to the districts. So I guess what my question to the council really is to best support all districts. So right now, all 180 charter schools and districts are showing evidence of partial implementation. So that had to be done July 1, 2024. Full implementation happens July 1, 2025. So I'm wondering, what are you thinking about, and how can we best support all districts getting to that full implementation by July 1, 2025. And I ask this because we've had parents and teachers reach out. We've listened to some of our board meetings, not our board meetings, but district board meetings and district finance meetings where it's being stated that they're not going to follow the law, period. Not following the law. They're not going to be adopting from the approved list. So what could we be doing to support the districts in moving forward? Because it's causing confusion among parents and teachers. You know, when they're hearing these, it's causing confusion among me. So I guess that's what I'm putting out there. Is the confusion is what can we do to best support all districts in coming into compliance with the law?
So Dr. Hickey, just to clarify, you would like our council members to comment on your question right now.
Yes, that'd be lovely if we could do that.
Okay. Again, please use your raise your hand button. And I just want to ensure, Ms. Healy, you had your button pushed, but I wasn't sure if it was for this or because you and Mr. Hernandez are going to be speaking during this section.
Yeah, I took my hand down. It was for the next session. Next section.
Okay.
Yeah, for the section we're in, but for, for the other,
Okay.
not this particular question.
All right. Thanks for clarifying. Mr. Hernandez?
Thank you so much, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak in reference to what Dr. Hickey just raised, but also the larger comment. So firstly, on the question of noncompliance, I think that we are in the state of Connecticut in a state of emergency when it comes to early literacy acquisition. And whether you're looking at local lawsuits now for children who are graduating without being able to read, whether you're looking at larger trends in lawsuits in our sister states, our districts are on notice that if you're not in compliance, you are in legal peril. So this isn't a question of whether or not you're going to comply. It's a question of how it is that we can really help you to come into compliance in as easiest and less onerous, less costly a way as possible. And I really appreciate the Dr. Hickey's offer and the way that she asks the question, how can we help? Because that really is the point here. The department is there to provide that professional development, to work with you, to bring together all of the elements of compliance that you need so that you're actually using research-based methods to actually deliver decoding symbols on a page. So it's and also rich context. So I think our districts are on notice. It's not a question of whether, it's how and when, because otherwise they are at legal risk and in peril. And if I were your lawyer, I would be advising you in that way now.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. I think you got to the absolute most important part of this. And if we haven't had our membership read the article about the Hartford Public Schools student, then we can certainly share it when we send out the minutes of this meeting. And just to underscore, all means all. So thank you. Dr. Gillis?
Yeah, thank you, Ellen, and thank you for those comments, Steve. I could not agree with you more. This is a crisis, and we in Connecticut still have one of the largest achievement gaps for many reasons, including the fact that I think there are still many districts who are saying they're going to teach evidence and research-based practices, but they're going to continue to do what they've been doing. And unfortunately, if somebody says that they're doing it, but they're not, that's a challenge for us to think about, if you're not admitting that you're staying with a balanced literacy approach, and I know there are many districts that are doing that, then how do we get them to acknowledge that they have to change, especially considering the fact that many of those districts are districts that have more affluence, and their test scores, they'll say their test scores are fine. They look good. Yes, maybe relative to the Hartfords and the New Havens that have totally different demographics and circumstances. But to your point, Ellen, all means all, every child matters. And so I think we have to really consider what's the best approach to ensuring that every single district is held accountable, including those that think their scores are just fine.
Thank you for articulating that as well. Ms. Ithier Vicente, please.
So I hope I'm answering this, but just from being a teacher, I think we're saying that we're going to have to implement that, but some districts or some teachers might be having a hard time with fidelity maybe, and teaching it because they might have a hard time internalizing. I think answering the question, what can we do to best support? Prioritizing time in PDs, whether it's district-based or school-based, to break it down and look at these new curriculums in a way that the teachers can collaborate with their other teachers and their other support staff. Because I know if school districts or teachers are kind of going back to what they feel is comfortable, it might be because they're more familiar with it. So I think prioritizing the time to internalize and really understand, you know, the procedures and how it connects and the importance of it would be important. I know we've had a extra PD that we got paid for, but also PD that we had people that are more experts in that curriculum and talked to us about how they broke it down, how they looked at the arch to see how they planned, because, you know, as this is my 8th year, but learning, we chose, Hartford Public Schools chose Wit and Wisdom as our new curriculum. So I felt like when I was looking at this new curriculum, I felt like I was a first-year teacher kind of looking and taking this big new curriculum and kind of breaking it down to see how I could teach the kids. So I hope I'm answering it, but I know that was helpful for me as a teacher, really, not just me looking at it on my own, but having time to break it down with others, and also having people, if there's coaches or administrators coming through and kind of giving feedback to what they see and maybe how they can connect what they were doing in the old curriculum with like the science of reading and how it connects to what they should be doing, so that teachers don't feel like they're starting from scratch, starting over, but just revamping and doing things the right way. Just my thoughts.
Very well articulated. I think, Ms. Healy, you had your hand raised next.
Yeah, hi. You know, I'd agree with, you know, just about everything that's been said already. From my experience, I think the biggest challenge is that many districts don't appreciate the mandate, right? They were given a list and told to pick one, even though we didn't really provide good data that would show them that the students' outcomes would be any better than what they were receiving already. I mean, I've heard anecdotally about high-performing districts, you know, oh, they have tutoring, they have better teacher training. You know, I know that, you know, I'm from New York, and so I know a lot of reading teachers there, and they were not mandated on a program that they were forced to pick. I mean, we have a very limited list. Who's to say that those are the best options? I mean, we need to consider they might not be the best options for every district in our state. I mean, there's challenges with all of them. I was going to bring some of them up later, but I think it's irrelevant. I think just being forced to choose from a list is not the best solution, and as well as the cost, right? You know, if we're going to mandate that every school district in our state pick one of the programs without providing the funding, even wealthy districts will struggle to get those costs met, especially at a time when reimbursements from the state are being lowered. You know, I think we need to do a better job as a state on engaging with every district. I don't think that happened during the process, the waiver process. There were many complaints about not being heard, not being trusted with their own curriculum. And I think we also should really engage with our state legislature on possibly changing the legislation. I really don't want to see, and I would not agree that we should start litigating this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Healy. And moving to Dr. Coyne.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to respond to Dr. Hickey's question around supporting districts moving into compliance. And I do think that, this is new for many districts, and districts need support. We were just talking about before about the need for professional development. And I know that the center has provided support to districts before around evaluating the fit of some of the materials and platforms on the list with specific needs and contexts of districts. So I do think that kind of process that involves a needs evaluation of the specific of the district and their needs and their goals, and then that very careful systematic process of evaluating how the different resources and programs can meet those goals is a process that's been successful in the past, and that it's hard to force districts to do that, but I do think that that's a really supportive way for the center to help districts really understand what their needs are and how they can leverage, the supports from these initiatives to move their district forward in terms of supporting all kids with reading.
Thank you. Very thoughtfully said. And I see that Superintendent Highsmith, you raised your hand as well.
I did. So I think one of the core issues is, I don't know if the issue of whether this constitutes a curriculum has ever been resolved. And if it has not been resolved about whether or not this is a curriculum, if you peel back a little bit more, there's a core question of whether the state can mandate it. Has that ever been resolved sort of at the statutory or legal level? So that's one argument that I've heard from it. I don't know, maybe other people know better what the prospects might be for having a legislative change. But if you do that, what happens to all the districts who've already chosen a program and started the work? Do we just stop? And if we didn't really want to do it in the first place, do we just stop and not do it anymore? So I think some core questions have to be answered before we can fully determine how you proceed, whether this constitutes a curriculum. And if it does, whether the State Department of Education has a statutory authority to require people to choose one.
So with your questions, I just want to defer to Dr. Hickey. I'm thinking we still have Principal Scott Brown who has a comment. Would you like to wait until after Chandra speaks to the group before responding to anybody? And we also don't want to
Sure, thanks.
put you in a spot of having to respond to everything right now if there's things that you need time to pursue. So that's okay with you? We'll go ahead
please.
with Principal.
Chandra would be great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all. And I appreciate everyone's comments on this matter. And being a building administrator, and before the legislation was even, the ink had dried on it, as a school, I took it upon myself to provide my entire staff with professional development and learning using both the Hill for Literacy and Literacy How to really shape and drive our instructional practices around the science of reading. And to be very transparent, this happened before the adoption of any reading program had to be selected. And our struggle now, what we're finding is that our district chose a program, a reading program that we must implement, but we're finding a disconnect with the tenets of all the tenets of the science of reading around skills for students, and finding great success in the area around of the knowledge block. And so my wonder around districts who have not chosen to embrace the mandates, and around those districts that have, I wonder is the resistance around a lack of of knowledge around the instructional practices first, and then being able to choose the most the best fit for their school, for their district, and for their students. Honestly, I think our district chose the converse. I just finished the Right to Read legislation training that the state provided. And my school was the only school that had already engaged in this work prior to. And so now we're like 10 steps ahead of where the district is, but finding it very challenging to have that total alignment. And so I think part of the problem is the resistance is around just a lack of understanding around the science of reading and its tenets without any program mandates. But I think, when we all know better, we do better, and we are able to make better informed decisions. And so that's just my 2 cents on the matter. But I do think that if district leaders have a better understanding of the science of reading and how to implement those tenets for their staff and provide solid professional development, I think everyone could make a better decision when it comes to problematic selections for their district.
Thank you, Principal Brown, and thank you all for your comments. Certainly filled with insights and a few questions. So with those questions, Dr. Hickey, would you like to respond or inform our council? We do have about 13 minutes available. And then considering that Mr. Hernandez and Ms. Healy also wanted to add to the conversation.
Sure. So I was taking notes. So thank you so much. I really do appreciate your thoughts and your insights and your personal experiences. The only thing that I would mention based on what was said is this is really only a handful of districts. Like Superintendent Highsmith was kind of saying, out of the 180, there's maybe 5 who are just really, they have not participated in professional learning. They refused, they did not take the grant funds. And, there's, like I said, some who have been in articles or in their boards of ed or finance board meetings or in other meetings saying they're not going to follow the law. So everything you mentioned was very helpful. I appreciate it. I will take it back and reflect upon it. I don't think I have any clarifying questions right now. But once again, I appreciate this time, and I was coming forward once again as a council member during that comments and insights portion. I did email ahead of time to tell or to ask Kati if I could have a portion of this time. So thank you so much for that process as well. I appreciate it. Did I still see 3 hands up? I don't know if those are last minute thoughts or okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate everything. Thank you.
Thank you all. And let's continue under our comments and insight section with Stephen Hernandez, please.
Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for just a really thoughtful feedback. I just wanted to touch on a few other things if I could. Firstly, on the survey, I think it's really, really smart that as we think about what it is that we lay on, that we also think about what it is that we take away. And the survey was a point in time method of really bridging at the time teachers that really needed the help, really needed to catch up. You don't know what you don't know. And giving them that time. Another thing that happened that I think goes underlooked sometimes is that we decoupled summative evaluations from the survey. And that was really important because we wanted to really communicate to teachers that this was not a gotcha. So I really appreciate that. On the 4 to 12, I think it's super smart to think about how it is that we move into that. I'm really appreciate that we're going to have that conversation. Once you get to 4 to 12, it's less kids, hopefully, and it's more of an emergency. So I think it's key to think about it that way. I love that the department did a focus on multilingual learning and early literacy and how those two pedagogies come together. I thought that was really, really smart that we as a state are leading and talking about multilingual learners and the unique challenges, but also opportunities that symbols-based languages really pose for our young learners who are multilingual. So thank you for that. Another thing that we're really noticing, especially for those districts that may not be using the science of reading to teach reading, but yet so many of their children are reading at grade level, at proficiency or beyond. And it just shows that high impact tutoring works. So I wanted to always bring in high impact tutoring, because in those districts where a parent might not have access to the science of reading in their district, they are paying for their children to get high impact tutoring, and it just really works. So I really wanted to lift that up. And finally, on instructional practices related to literacy, we can have any program in the world, and unless we have good implementation science and the support that comes behind that, then we're not going to be able to implement any program with fidelity. So I think being able to double down on supporting schools and teachers on implementation science and giving them the time that they need, I think is critically important. And I really appreciate, Yasmin, you bringing that up. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez, especially with your reference to some research-based structures like high impact or high dosage tutoring. So thank you. Ms. Healy.
Yeah, hi. So, I think a lot of mine are quite specific to the programs that the districts that I've spoken to have chosen. Again, they're not all perfect. They all are going to have their challenges. I guess it's up to those districts to determine whether or not they stick with what they have or change to another option. I would again like to restate that it's possible that we have not captured all of the good programs out there, and we should always be thinking of adding to those if possible. With, again, all the districts had the same comments about money, right? So one of my questions was, and I think Dr. Hickey referred to it, the $20 million grants that we had assigned to different districts. If they haven't taken theirs, or if there's any funding left over, can we appropriate any more to districts so that we do, use what we have and try to take some of the burdens off of the districts that have chosen a program that, as we know, are quite costly. There was a lot of good feedback on a lot of the professional development teacher training. One of them specifically I heard about was the masterclass. And I just wanted to follow up because somebody had mentioned it possibly wasn't being funded by the Department of Education anymore. And if that's the case, why not? And then again, it kind of comes back to funding, but there was, we mentioned the student in Hartford, but there was also the dyslexia department resignation and somewhat alarming claims that teachers aren't being properly trained. There's not enough funding for dyslexia specifically. So I know that doesn't particularly fall under us, but we have talked about dyslexia in the past. And I just think, if that department is, I don't know what the status, if they're just going to replace that person or if it's going to be disbanded. But if that kind of training is going to fall under our or the center's professional, department, we should start considering reviewing that. And the final thing was I did submit a request for a speaker who is specifically trained on, bringing the clarity to policy, how policy implements implementation in states. And I think for me anyway, maybe not all of you, I'm not sure, but it would be helpful to see how other states have done this well. Like I mentioned, New York, they did not mandate, so maybe they're going to find it less problematic than we are. And I know that it was just mentioned there's only 5 that are essentially pushing back, but I can tell you from I talked to, it was a Fairfield County legislative breakfast. I didn't get the feeling that many were, they were felt forced, right? There were some comments about potential pushback to superintendents, pushback on their, on them specifically if they do not comply. And I don't think that's good government. So whether or not we bring in the new education chair from the legislature, we have her come to a meeting, we can talk to her about things, or if we as a council can maybe have a session on where we discuss things that we think need to change, and we can bring them to them when they go back into session. But that's about it for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Healy. And before I defer to Dr. Hickey with some of your questions, which are certainly relevant, I just want to comment on the guest speaker form. Those of you who were with us last year know that the council drafted and accepted a guest speaker form so that any of our council members could identify a speaker, and then the council would actually review the request and determine if this is a speaker that would be relevant for us to invite to speak with us. So in that we received it quite recently, we will be sending that speaker form out, Ms. Healy, to the entire council for their review, and then move according to what our council determines. So thank you for using that form, and we will attach a blank form as well when we send out the minutes from today's meeting, so that anybody in the council could pursue suggesting a potential speaker. So in that we're
Could I just follow up on that? So does that mean we won't even be considering the speaker until our February meeting, and then the potential for her to come speak wouldn't be until April? Or
Well,
can we
actually,
expedite that because it could be more relevant?
It will depend. Right now, we actually have some districts that are planning to come to the council meeting in February. So it will depend on time, but we will get the your form out as soon as possible, so that everybody at least can review the speaker, and then we will look at our agenda coming up. That's really all I can say right now. Dr. Hickey, before we move to the next item on the agenda, would you like to respond to any of the questions or comments from Ms. Healy?
Sure. So the master class does not come from the center. It is an experience that is now under the academic office. So I really can't speak about that contract and the contract with CAPS, our Connecticut Association of Public Schools Superintendents. For those of you who either watched the meetings last year or were part of the meetings last year, you know that Fran and I often talked about the masterclass, and we presented on the masterclass. And that's been really exciting work. Some of the superintendents and districts here on the council have also participated in the masterclass and have derived great benefits from it. The money that was put into that was part of the federal funds, so I don't know about moving forward with that and the funding around that. So the Office of Dyslexia and Reading Disabilities, we like to call them our sister office. We work very closely together. If you want to be truly impressed, watch our last board meeting. You will hear Athena and Kristen from the ODRD reporting out, and you will be, just like I said, impressed and astonished at their depth of knowledge and where they're going with the work. That position that was vacated is legislated. So, once again, no, that's not part of the center work. But as far as I know, we will be moving forward as an agency to post and hire for that position. So I think that was all for right now, just to answer those. But thank you both so much. I appreciate that. Matt, did you want to say something? Where are you, Dr. Conway?
Sure, and thanks. Yeah, just a quick follow-up regarding the masterclass question. I can share the commissioner in her budget, as opposed to under legislative proposals, in her budget under curriculum and standards for the fiscal year 26 and 27 has proposed an expansion of 4.6 million. Of that 4.6, 3 million toward high-quality instructional materials and 1.6 million for the Science of Reading master classes to continue for the districts that have not had an opportunity to participate yet. In addition to that, CAPS in our legislative proposal that just got passed by our board last Friday, we've asked for 3.5 million, all of which to go toward the Science of Reading master class. We feel we could get 100% of the districts having participated with that amount of funding.
Well, that's
Thank you,
happy
Dr.
news. Thanks
Conway.
for sharing. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Dr. Conway.
Yeah, that's great news. So with the great news in mind, let's first of all, thank you to the entire council and to those of you who brought forward some feedback from the field. Dr. Hickey, I believe you're on with your director's update.
All right, thank you very much. Let me advance the slides here. That you said. All right, so this is leading into the work around the strategy that Ellen did reference. And I just wanted to kind of provide a little history for those who were not part of the council before or were not routinely watching the meetings. So per legislation, the center is charged to work in collaboration with the Office of Early Childhood to create a birth to grade 12 or through grade 12 a strategy. And then this strategy would be aligned with reading instruction of the 2-Gen initiative, which is now called the Multi-Gen initiative, which is really about pulling in parents and focusing on the whole family and lifting the whole family. And then therefore lifting literacy skills and other things as well. And of course, Stephen has been or chaired a committee on that and has deep knowledge in that area. Anything you want to add about the Multi-Gen initiative, Stephen?
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I think it's always important to place education along the course of the proper trajectory that it represents, which is essentially it's connecting young people to their future, to their economy, families to the economy, families to productivity and success. So it really is a way to connect young people to their future. And that's really important that we think about it that way. And that's what 2Gen does. It thinks about the whole family, how the family supports young learners. One of the biggest indicators of a kid's learning access and success is mom's learning access and success. So all those things are connected. So thank you for bringing that up. That's really exciting.
Yep. And then what we did was with the former council is create that literacy strategy for K-3. And you'll find this every time we're going to have one of our council meetings, I'll be updating you on our progress around the goals. And these goals are what the council created for the work of the center. So under Center Strategic Goal 2, you'll see serve as this collaborative research center to strengthen the EPP programs. Understanding of this responsive, specifically based evidence-based, that should be scientifically based, scientifically based evidence-based literacy instruction implemented within an MTSS framework. And it's all about the strategy and getting our higher education programs more educated around this strategy. So from September 2022 to December of 2022, I worked with the council. We did create and complete the K-3 strategy, which was then posted February of 2023. So that's just some history and how all these initiatives work together. So we have the literacy plan that highlights and outlines the work for the center that was created in partnership with the council. And then the actual work that was completed, that was one of the deliverables, was to create the strategy and then start working with the higher education programs on that strategy. Any questions about the history before we move on to our next path forward? All right, a great thank you to all of those who worked on both of those documents. Much, much appreciated. We use them all the time. So now back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Hickey, and thank you for a little bit of that update, because we'll be digging deeply into the literacy strategy today. So before we do, Dr. Hickey and I spent some time, a couple sessions, being able to capture what we thought from the legislation is the actual work of our Reading Leadership Implementation Council. And how do we put that in the form of a goal? So we talked a little bit about it in our October meeting. And after the meeting and after meeting between Dr. Hickey and me, we did send out to you our draft. This is the draft that we went through a couple times. We still found one thing missing, which hopefully we'll add today. But if you had a chance to read this in advance, or if you need some time now, we welcome over the next few minutes, 5 minutes, any feedback on this. We're not going to vote on it per se, other than ensuring that all of us are in agreement, not using Robert's Rules of Order, but just consensus. So any comments from our group? I think I see Dr. Conway, unless you already had your hand raised previously. Okay, Superintendent Highsmith.
So I'm just wondering whether it was intentional that this is all sort of input based. It doesn't talk about what students might be able to do as a result. So I'm wondering if that was intentional.
Well, you mean, are you referring to the very last sentence?
Well, all of it, right? Because it's all about what the inputs will be. And it's not about your student outcomes. The outcome is going to be that 100% of the districts will deliver the literacy instruction, but it doesn't talk about what students will then do or be able to do.
Okay. Any comments on Superintendent Highsmith's comment? Should we consider as a council that we are more specific perhaps on what success looks like for all students? Mr. Hernandez?
If I may, thank you so much, Superintendent, for raising that, because the question of whether the point is, and the science tells us that 98% of children can learn to read. And in some of our districts that are just utterly upside down when it comes to even proficiency, and even those districts when we're only at 78 or 80, that means that something is missing. There's an opportunity gap. So this is about accountability. And it's about accountability because without that key foundational skill, children are just not going to catch up. So I think we need to be holding the districts and the state accountable for what it promises to do. And I'm looking at the state first, because this is about funding. This is about prioritizing. This is about how is it that we're going to help resource our districts to do the best that they can. So I've always done that. I always look at the state first. I don't punish districts or pit them against each other. So I think it's important that we put the fire to the state that promises that children should be able to learn to read by 3rd grade and beyond.
Thank you. I'm just taking notes on some of the actual terms that you used to see how they could fit in our next draft. And Dr. Conway?
Yeah, if I could add, and thank you, Superintendent Highsmith. You know, just as we as districts always set our goals, the evidence of is based upon outcomes for students, I think it's a great opportunity for the council to model exactly what we're asking districts to do as well.
Good point.
Otherwise, it's really we're setting goals for compliance as opposed to actual action and outcomes.
Dr. Hickey, from the center perspective, do you have any comments on shaping the goal of what the work of the council is to reflect the work of districts on behalf of students?
I guess I'm not quite understanding if I could see maybe an example of what is being talked about. I don't know about anybody else on the council. If you have thoughts or questions around this, I'm not understanding what changes would you want done here to reflect what you are saying.
Just putting data numbers, just as we do with our goals, as the outcome. So as a result of the 100% of Connecticut districts and charter schools delivering the evidence-based comprehensive core literacy instruction, what is beyond that statement? What is our actual goal? It's to increase reading for students. So I would get more specific in terms of we're going to go from where we are now to X growth target over a 2-year period of time.
All right. Yeah, because in the plan, the literacy plan that was created by the council previously around the work of the center, we do have numbers in there of the students aligned to the EdSite, the performance data and accountability data. So I don't know, are you suggesting maybe lifting it from there and adding it to here as well? Because we could do that.
I think that'd be a great start to use both performance as well as growth.
Right. And for me, I'm just thinking that there ought to be some more specifics on that part of the sentence that says promote success for all students. I think that's kind of nebulous. And, you know, success for some students might be 2% growth, another success for other students might be 45% growth. So I'm not saying how we should define it for each and every student, but I just think we need better sort of parameters for that part of the sentence.
So maybe go back to our overarching goal for the council and the center, which is so that all children are reading proficiently. Is it accurately and proficiently? I'm drawing a blank right now. By the end of 3rd grade, something like that. And then I can go back and look in the plan to see what data we outlined there.
Yeah, I think your comments are certainly well-founded because
yeah, absolutely.
we're looking at our work as a council and what is it that we want to achieve and what is it that we want for Connecticut students. So I think we can continue to work on this, Dr. Hickey, and then we can send it back out. So no vote or discussion beyond this, because we
Right.
still have are approaching the end of the time for this. So if it's all right with the council members, then you and I, Dr. Hickey, can further hone this. I also want to add the time component, which according to the law, from my understanding, is by July 1, 2025. So it kind of specifies what it is we need to be doing, and then continue the work in year 2 as well. Okay. Thank you all for your great discussion on this and your addition to having a more comprehensive and precise goal. So as one of the activities for today, in being able to expand what we have now as part of our K-3 literacy strategy to grades 4 through 12, it's of course different when you're considering the ages and experiences with reading for our upper elementary, middle, and high school students. So I believe Kati is going to be putting you into 3 different groups, and we will have probably until, I would say, 3:20, so we have enough time to come back to discuss. So you will see these 2 questions. Kati, if you can put the links in the chat to the K-3 literacy strategy, I think it will be helpful when we do break into our 3 groups. So Kati, if you have your magic wand to make this happen.
Yes, I'll go ahead and share the link and open up the rooms.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll see you back at 3:20. Back?
I think Dr. Lucero got bumped out. She's getting admitted back in now.
Okay, great.
And Mike's here too. Okay, cool. Thanks. Yay.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. I know that in my group, Dr. Gillis and I had a robust discussion. We really only have 5 minutes left, so we're going to just jump right in. Please raise your hand or press your raised hand button if you would like to summarize what happened in your group for either question 1 or question 2. Okay, Dr. Gillis. Oh, and then Mr. Hernandez. Thank you.
Okay, I'll be short and sweet because we always enjoy hearing Steve. But Ellen and I just talked about the fact that this is me speaking, right? Personally, the K-3 literacy strategies are applicable and relevant for 4th through 12th grade, I believe. What differentiates or distinguishes, and something that I think we have to address, is that there is not as much available. For example, assessments, it's harder to find universal screeners. It's harder to find diagnostics. It's harder to help teachers 4 through 12 understand, and I'm going to say 6 through 12. 4th and 5th grade teachers, many of them have been included in the K-3 literacy initiative, which is awesome, just because their leaders see the wisdom in including them. But when you're talking about 6 through 12, they don't have the background, many of them, in literacy. It's departmentalized in middle and high school. Those teachers, some would be willing to address literacy gaps, but they don't know how to do that. So I think it's a matter of finding the tools and then helping sort of figure out how to align what's been happening K-5 and bring it into middle school so it's not seen as separate. Like this is just an extension of the work that we're doing already. We're going to build on our successes. We're going to, course correct if we need to, and we always do need to. But we're going to really have a district-wide literacy approach that actually is K-12 now. And again, that sounds simple, but it will not be simple. And we just talked about some specifics. So I'll stop there so we can hear what Steve and his group talked about.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Dr.
and
Gillis. And
Thank you, Dr. Gillis.
You're welcome.
The only thing that I would add just really quickly is on what Dr. Gillis just said. I think this is 4 to 12 is when, or the later years is when we start thinking about cost, resource sharing, regional resource sharing. It's really a deployment strategy in addition to the deployment of the skill set. So thinking about how we share across districts, I think is really important. And then secondly, Matt, through the power of his actual intelligence and artificial intelligence, created this amazing document that actually did create a crossroad between K3 and then the years beyond, which I think is really useful. And I would love, Matt, if you would share that with us, if you would, with the rest of the group, because I think it demystifies in the way that you just described, Margie,
awesome.
the work. So thank you for
Can
that.
you, Dr. Conway, can you send that to Kateria Rivera, and then she can disseminate it when she sends out an email to everyone with all the information from today, if that's okay. Thank you. Was there
Thank
another
you.
group besides our group, my group?
Yep, and I nominate Ashley because she's going to do a phenomenal job.
Thank you for that nomination, Superintendent. I'm happy to share it. We had a great conversation and similar comments to the other groups. We talked about really wanting to make sure that the integration of reading instruction within content area and preparing teachers to teach disciplinary literacy was really, really clearly present. And again, talked about how much overlap there is and how needful these things are and how open we feel like many teachers would be and hungry for this if there was attention and time and resources paid to, managing some of the complexities. But not unlike K3, maximizing looking at your schedule is very important. That challenge in high school is very different, but scheduling is critically important. So we talked about some of those things and just really wanting to think about how to help them in this extension, really help thinking about the assets that secondary teachers bring and helping them to think about themselves as reading teachers as well, which is, I think, more true in a K3, K5 context, but maybe less true than naturally for teachers who are prepared more traditionally in content. And we talked about how ed prep programs need to kick this off and how that kind of transition from ed prep into induction and into professional, their professional path to be streamlined. So good conversation. What did I miss, group mates?
No, I told you it would be perfect. I told you.
well, thank you. I know we just lost Dr. Conway and Stephen Hernandez, and we are at 3:31. Thank you for summarizing. Thank you for engaging in this such important next step for our council. We don't meet again until February 25th, which seems like a long time away. But on behalf of the center and myself, we wish you a very joyful holiday season ahead and a very happy new year. Meeting adjourned. Thank you so much for a great conversation.